Have you ever wondered what makes a top player better than most? It's not always new deck ideas or grinding matches for experience. It often comes down to many concepts and ideas that are all put together to give a player a larger chance to win. I want to share these concepts and ideas with you. Some are simple to implement, and some are much more complex and secretive. Every short video I put in this playlist will inform you and show you how you can even the playing field between you and the top players. Today, we'll be discussing tempo. Let's start with a basic overview of the concept's definition. In many games with mana systems or summoning sickness, this term can be described as a way to summon on mana curve, push damage, and gain field presence, while continuously summoning stronger and stronger monsters that are hard to remove from the field. You are being proactive in your plays and summons to make your opponent play defensive or commit resources in a reactionary manner. However, we are looking into how it applies to Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi-Oh! It can be considered the pacing of the game or momentum you are creating with monsters or resources in an offensive way to apply pressure. Let's take a deeper look into what this fundamental concept is and how we can use it to increase our win rate. There are three main ways to obtain tempo. The first being through field tempo, the second through life points, and the third is by resource tempo. Let's start with the main one you'll be using most of the time, the field tempo. Here is an example. My opponent summons a monster, and I summon a larger monster to defeat their monster. My opponent decides to set a card and set a back row and end their turn. So I maintain and keep up the pressure here by summoning Breaker the Magical Warrior. I use its effect to destroy the back row and take out his monster. My opponent is now looking down two monsters with none on their field. My opponent has no choice but to set to soak up some damage and end their turn. So I do what's only natural and summon another monster. I have the tempo or momentum since I'm on the offensive with my larger monsters. When you have a lot of field tempo, your opponent has to absorb the pressure, putting them on a turn timer where the tempo will get too far out of control and you will lose in a few turns. This is a basic example of tempo-based strategy. Every turn, a larger force is being mounted on the field, putting pressure on my opponent to deal with it. In this second example, we can observe the importance of advancing your field. I summon my monster Kaiku, and I pass my turn. My opponent decides to summon Kaiku as well, and crash with my Kaiku. You might be thinking I've lost tempo, but in reality, my tempo was slowed but not removed. I get to be on the play again during my turn. I didn't lose tempo, but I didn't gain tempo. I just maintained my tempo. My opponent is still on the back foot. Now we move on to the third example. I summon and nothing happens, so I think she might have a mirror force. I use Call of the Haunted to summon my monster for more damage and tempo, but get hit with Torrential Tribute, destroying all my monsters and my tempo. Overextending with tempo can make you lose, and to stop that, tempo relies on game sense. I should have made a judgment call on what my opponent could have or do to stop me, and narrow down the possibilities of losing my tempo. I knew it's not likely they had Mirror Force after my first attack, but then Torrential Tribute was a possibility that I fell into. If you make good reads, you can increase your tempo and control of the game. Making reads is a deeper subject for another video, however. The last point to make is that card advantage naturally creates tempo. The more cards you have, the more plays you can make. If you are losing in card advantage, you can make a last-ditch push on the field to try to reach for game. Considering that you will lose from sheer number of cards they can play in a single turn, sometimes this is the only option after a certain point. Some instances you can maintain the pace of the game even if you're behind in card advantage, by using strong effects, spells, or traps, such as Majesty's Fiend. Although I have many monsters in my hand, I can't use them effectively because of Majesty's negation effect. Life points can also be a source for tempo. Usually they go hand in hand with field tempo, but life points can be used for tempo in burn decks or decks that use life points in a way to function, like Cliff Forts or Trickstar. Trickstar puts you on a clock with burn damage and forces you to play in a faster pace, while Cliff Forts spend life points to function as a deck. Because of this, it plays fast before you can abuse its life point loss. Life points can even be given to gain tempo later on in a match. Resource tempo is a thing for modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Here we can see Twilightsworn building tempo with its graveyard stacking. I am pressuring my tempo with speed to my win conditions. My opponent has to keep up and respond with more or the same pace, or they will be run over. Many decks can use this style of pressure to win them the game without much field presence, like Spellbooks or Sky Strikers. Mirror matches often promote being more aggressive than normal, since you are both reaching for similar win conditions, and usually the first person to the win condition is going to get the victory. Going first is vital to tempo, since most damage in Yu-Gi-Oh! Comes from monsters' attacks. It's good to set the pace from the start where you can't be interrupted much. One might say the best defense is a good offense. Make your opponent deal with your cards before they can mount their own offense. Tempo can be used to muscle your opponent into your plays, make mistakes, or suboptimal plays. You can even gain card advantage by making them deal with your large field presence. The pacing of the game is an effective way to win, so you should do everything in your power to understand this concept and use it in your favor. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.